All right, everyone, we're going to get started with the next section, the systems discussions. And we are going to have Peter from SMU moderating this for us. So I'm going to turn things over to Peter. Take it away.
All right, thanks, Katie. Yep, for anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Peter Webster. I'm with St. Mary's University in Halifax. Wonderful to see everybody in person and a terrific group of people online. Lots of folks online. So we wanted to have a systems and systems interoperability discussion with you guys. And I'm going to try and get that started and keep it moving. So you'll see the questions that have been put up on the screen. We're going to ask the same three questions about the two main systems that we work with, the Ex Libris systems. So the Ex Libris Alma resource sharing, or what we call peer-to-peer, Rapido, and Rapid ILL. And we'll start with those. And then we'll talk about the OCLC systems, the Relay ILL, WorldShare, and Tapasa. And I know that it's kind of a mixed bag, who's working with what. So as we get to them, I will try and make sure that we hear from, I think not everybody is using Tapasa yet. I'm very interested to hear from the folks who are using it. Different groups of people using, Rapid ILL. So you can comment on whichever of the systems that you're using. So I'll get going. We're going to start talking about Ex Libris. And the first question is, let's start with a positive. Suzanne says one should always do a sandwich. Positive, then the negatives, and then end with the positive. So we'll try and we'll do the best we can on that. So first question, what's working well for you with the Ex Libris systems that you're working with? And I'll take hands. You guys can let me know if anybody has gotten to the chat. I will say that we've only started using peer-to-peer recently, and I am an administrator. I oversee a bunch of things, including document delivery. Some of my excellent document delivery staff are in the room, and they're probably going to contradict anything I have to say about it, how document delivery works, because they know a whole heck of a lot more about it than I do. But talking about Ex Libris, peer-to-peer has opened up a whole new world for us. It's allowed us to share materials quite rapidly with a wide range of libraries we haven't worked with before, particularly in Ontario and other parts of the country, and out west, I think now too. So it's been a real boon that way, and it's also, of course, been a real boon because it is built on top of Alma, a system that we're already working with daily. So that's our thoughts. What are other people finding about it? I'd like to hear from the people who are using Rapid ILL, what you found good about it. I'll call you out by name if I have to. Also interested in, are there people either in the room or online who are using Rapido already? And love to hear what you're thinking. What are the good things about it? There's got to be some good stuff. Yeah. Go ahead and grab yourself a mic.
Hi, so Shelley Gullickson from Carleton. We call it Rapido, but we called it Rapido until we got it, and now we call it Rapido for some reason.
I think the Ex Libris guys call it Rapid.
I think that's why we call it Rapido. What I wanted to say for working well was Rapid ILL. The digital stuff has been working really well for us. A lot of stuff goes through unmediated. I was looking at our stats the other day, and the unmediated Rapid ILL stuff works really, really well. Another thing that's really nice with, and I think this comes with Rapido, is the user interface. Super easy for users just to mash a button and say they want something. I'll leave the challenges about that until the next question.
All right, when we talk about the challenges, and that's with Rapido that you're finding that they can work unmediated. They're just placing the requests themselves, and we can talk about whether that presents challenges with you as well. Other folks who are using Ex Libris systems, what do you find really good about the system. For the Rapid ILL users, you've been using it for a while. How are you finding that? And yeah, Joe, I was waiting for you to put your hand up. Thank you.
Yeah,
Oh,
I thought I'd start speaking before you called me out, and
yeah.
yeah, no, we at Dalhousie have been using Rapid ILL since, Marilyn will correct me, 2007, 2010. Okay. But it's the best thing that's ever been invented, really, for ILL and document delivery. It it's slick, and again, it's an enclosed system. You report your holdings. The holdings are clean. It searches against those holdings, and it's really accurate, and fast, and yeah, it's an ideal system. And now it's integrated with Alma, of course, our Alma. So it's just added that much more efficiency to that. The article ordering and chapter ordering is just so efficient. But yeah, great experience. And we've liked P2P as well. We've liked Alma. It's not quite, of course, you're doing something a little more complicated, a little less clean. The holdings are not always accurate, and availability may not be there. And the thing I dislike about a system like that is that that's where you want to get in there and change things or make it do something the system might not want to do, which is what that's what we do. And sometimes systems are built in a way that they don't allow you to do that. But I guess that's a negative, and I'm
Yeah,
not supposed to be doing that. So.
Yeah, that's the next part of the conversation. But
and I'll also give a plug to WorldShare, ILL, which is a great product that we've also been using for a very long time. And we were fortunate to have it integrated with our old relay, the old ISO relay, so that we were able to transfer requests to that network and process them and manage them through relay. So that was great too, but that's of course all going away. But we hope to continue with that as well in some way.
I haven't heard anybody say anything nice about WorldShare.
I just did.
Some of you are only using WorldShare, and I would say probably everybody is using WorldShare to some extent. What do you like about it? Nobody has anything good to say about WorldShare? Okay, Carlton, go ahead.
Sorry, I thought we were only talking about Ex Libris.
Sorry, Andy.
Yeah, we have both Rapido and WorldShare, and we've been finding WorldShare is fantastic for our Canadian partners, particularly public libraries. Also, because we're so close to the Quebec border, a lot of the Quebec universities use, I think most of them have to pass it, but most of them are on OCLC. And so being able to have really great connections with our Quebec partners is super, super important and has been working really well. So we're very happy with our WorldShare.
Yeah, I mean, the comprehensiveness of WorldShare is the feature that stands out for me. And, compared to other systems, which are some sort of a closed group, for the most part, WorldShare's attempt to cover any library that, that wants to do a decent job of. Now, I suspect that WorldShare still misses some stuff. And Katie, I am going to call you out because you've said that you work a lot with LAM institutions, but not necessarily libraries. Do you find stuff that's not in WorldShare, or do you find WorldShare as comprehensive as it needs to be?
If you've ever been in a meeting with me, this is the moment I defer to my technician.
Yeah.
Because she is a genius.
Yeah.
And she's in the room.
Not as smart as ours.
Yeah, we actually do. We find, I would say that we get two types of requests. We get easy and we get hard, and the easy ones are in WorldShare, and the ones that aren't in WorldShare become hard. I mean, WorldShare is probably our first go-to. No, it's not. See, I'm not, why am I answering this question? What? We have, sorry, we have First Search. We use First Search exclusively. We don't have WordShare. That's why she's shaking her head at me.
Okay.
We don't use WorldShare at all. We only use Relay. So we're using it. Sorry, we're still getting our locations
Yes.
from OCLC via a First Search subscription, and we are mediating that way. And I would still stand by what I said, just that I don't know the vocabulary, that the easy ones are the ones that are in First Search, and the ones that are hard are the ones outside of that. We would just export those over and create a or route our requests then through Relay or through Alma, now that we're starting to use P2P. And that's always been my experience, because I've always been at small libraries. They've only ever been able to afford First Search. I've never used WorldShare. I left Dalhousie before they started using it. So First Search has always been that middle ground for me in small libraries.
Yeah, Cynthia, you've got some folks online.
Yeah, so there's some comments in the chat. There's a lot of significant support for WorldShare IFM. Great, love our words being used. WorldShare is great for access to international libraries, which was the other big one. There are some struggles for finding journal years / volumes within the platform, lots of clicking out to catalogs, but that isn't surprising when local catalogs have the same challenge. We also use WorldShare for verification of the request, and WorldShare is our first go-to after Novanet. We don't use any of the Ex Libris products, including P2P, because our ILL staff person is a temporary contract person, and we are concerned about opening the floodgates.
A follow-up question on the Ex Libris stuff. As you rolled out, and a number of us have gone to peer-to-peer relatively recently. I think Dalhousie has been using Rapid ILL for a longer period of time, but what has been your process of talking to other Ex Libris product users, figuring out best practices, getting things set up? What's the communication process been like? Has that been no communication was needed, we pushed a button, or what has the conversation had to be as you broadened your network and added new products?
Oh, we have a question online, so I'm going to turn it over to Becky.
Yeah, to answer Peter's question, it is a scenario of we went live with Rapido in 2022, if my memory serves me, and at that point in time, trying to rebuild our network was one of those things where how do we do this? How do we get people to realize that the peer-to-peer is a thing, even though we're a Rapido library? We can still interact with all of the other Alma resource sharing libraries without issue. So I'm hoping that there are many people in the room there who've had conversations with me of let's get you introduced to the system, let's get you introduced to some of the basics, and let's do some of that conversation, that social aspect to it, to make sure that we're all on the same page to get everything working. So I found that really valuable, to try and make sure that they at least had some groundwork to begin with, and ensure that if they're running into something, maybe we've already run into it and we can help them out, so that we're I'm providing some support to people that I'm hoping and begging might also join me on this network.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
So from Alex Fletcher, for Alma resource sharing, workflow documentation and config stuff, Ocul has put together a full set of resources, and then he provides a link, which we will provide to you. But apparently Ocul's put a bunch of stuff together that will be helpful.
Sorry, where's Alex from?
Ocul.
Okay, right. Yeah, no, I know that we in the Atlantic provinces have been working a lot with the Ocul schools, and I don't know as much as I could about the extent to which that's been a centralized communication with OCL and how much it's been a communication with the individual schools. Have you had to talk to individual schools that you're now going to be sharing materials with, or have you relied on the fact that the ROTA is now working and you're signed up and
I'm going to jump in here because we have a hand from Alex Fletcher at OCL. So I'm going to turn it over to Alex.
all right.
So I figure this is a perfect chance for me to answer your question directly. When
Thanks, Alex.
we've been interacting with people, we work as our Omni group, which is 19 of our libraries. U of T sits separately from us in terms of that, but we usually loop them in on communication. So for instance, when Becky from Memorial reached out to us, I'm going to say that was about 3 or 4 years ago. That was our first dip of toes in the water. When I think it was Dalhousie, that was one of the first in Novanet that was interested. We dipped our toe there and said, hey, if you want to share, we got 19 partners for you right out of the box. And it worked that way, moving to the west of Canada with Calgary and Alberta and other places. And we're doing it sort of on the consortial level, reaching out and creating 19 new partners for people, potentially 20 if U of T is also interested. So that's how we work at it. And when people reach out to us for one of our schools, we ask them to loop us in and kind of go, hey, I know you wanted to talk to Brock, but we got 18 other partners if you're interested too, which suddenly grows that network that much more for everyone.
Okay, before I finish, yeah, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, it's really simple, or it's gotten really simple. And even at the beginning, it was more just an email and, do you want to share. And it was that simple. And it's probably made a little easier because we already have agreements in place as they govern, those things that you might want to negotiate otherwise. So really it's just a question of, okay, I'll do, we'll just make this happen, and it does. So it's really, really simple.
So a lot of the policy work has been done already in
work's
terms
been
of what
done.
people's borrowing rules are
Yeah.
and what have you.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that the Aussies were pointing out are really key. Okay, I've done the best I can with praise for the Ex Libris systems. Let's move on to the challenges. What's broken? What's not working as you would like? What won't the specifically the Ex Libris systems, what won't they do for you? Good stuff.
Hi, Will McCarty from Acadia. We don't have cross-billing within our consortium, and that's a problem when we have lost items. That's a circulation thing. It could be an ILL as well.
Yeah, Cynthia.
So from Joanne Vermont online, support is very slow. That was her emphasis.
I'm sorry, support is very slow. Okay, that was more, is that days?
It just says support is very slow from Ex Libris is just what she replied there. We do also have Becky, who is again with her hand up, who would like to chime in.
Yeah.
Yeah, like one of the things that I know many of us are struggling with is trying to interact with the other libraries that don't necessarily have a system. Many of us, including myself, don't think we really appreciated having Relay with a system where you could allow others to place requests into the system and be able to track things. And it's that request functionality for the others that, we do kind of miss that ease of getting the requests into a system.
All right, we'll perhaps come back to that later and talking about things we'd like to see, which will be the last question on the list. Other folks with challenges yet? Cynthia, more people online? Good.
Oh, yeah, there's some online. I encourage folks online to speak up verbally if you wish. Anyways, so just following up on the question around slow, there was weeks is the word they said from ex-Libris. Now, from Alex Fletcher, there were actually a list of challenges. So searching outside of your own library / consortium to other libraries can be a challenge without using Rapido. Outside of Rapido, no really good invoicing systems. And when mistakes happen with a request, it's not possible to fix. You simply have to duplicate the request and start over. I see a lot of head nodding here. And then placing conditions on loan requests is a bit of a challenge.
Now, does that mean there are not note capabilities? Again, the Australians were talking, and this has always been our case, that sometimes the special cases just get put into a note field. Is that?
That question came from Catherine Stone, and if Catherine, do you have an answer to what Peter was asking about the note field? Nothing yet. We will keep an eye.
A question that has often been asked, and I think you started to answer it talking about some of the things you don't have in Rapido. Yeah, keep going.
So Sabina says both the borrower and the lender have to have conditionals enabled in their config. It's not automatic.
Okay.
Not sure what that.
The question has been asked in the preparation for this meeting, when you guys were sending in potential questions for this discussion. Question was asked, what do we get out of Rapido that we're not getting with peer-to-peer? Why do we need Rapido if we're using peer-to-peer? And that's certainly a good challenges question. Yeah.
Shelley Gullickson from Carleton again. And apologies to the lovely ex-Libris people in the room. We do have Rapido, and as I mentioned earlier, it's great on the user side. There are a number of challenges, I think, on the staff side. One of them is what I alluded to earlier with the ease of just mashing the request button. If you're already integrating it with your Primo, there are a lot of terrible records that come in through the CDI. We've had people request online courses. We've had people request objects. We've had people request things that we can't figure out what they are just because terrible records come in. They hit the request button. And because Rapido is such a beautiful, seamless system, those requests just go off into the ether. Sometimes they get answered. A lot of the times they don't, and our staff are trying to figure out what they are. So I would just say that the seamlessness of it, the black boxness of Rapido often creates a lot of problems for staff. Not knowing, I think in Australia they mentioned stuff gets caught in a rota and you don't know where it's stuck. Things like that can happen a lot and just require a lot of staff time to sort that out. And sometimes mediated requests are actually easier because you know what you're looking for and you can find exactly the item. We've had a lot of issues with wrong books coming or wrong editions arriving because the request goes off, it gets filled, the book arrives, and then we find out that it's not the right thing. And that's just super frustrating for everybody.
Yep.
So there is a comment on the chat from Harjinder Rana. Seems like a lot of appealing developments, example, discovery, invoicing, ebook lending are happening in Rapido and not Alma resource sharing, probably by design. And there's some dollar signs beside it. And then there's one from Sabina, is the developer network is an important place to documentation. We found with Trove CAAL, the development network was a great place to post central documentation for centralized configs. And then there's a big, with lots of exclamation marks, bad matches. And then Alan responded to Sabina saying, we found this too. That's why we build the ORSH with its documentation, kind of best case stuff we found.
So the documentation is important. This whole question of holdings, I think we'll come back to, or good holdings or bad holdings. And I'm also interested to hear from folks who want to comment about patron mediation and letting the patrons just place the requests and have them go off to some other library. I know some of us are doing it and some of us are not. But before I get to that, let you go ahead and then Katie, well.
Thank you, Andy from University of King's College. Speaking on the kind of similar bad records, even if they're good records, because there is no communication between the AFN and the peer-to-peer system, oftentimes there will be requests that would be automatically shot out into the peer-to-peer system because it doesn't specifically match on the bibliographic record that was requested, without first searching within the AFN to see if there is another bibliographic match for that item. So speaking with personal experience, we get quite a number of requests coming in from Ontario in particular, sorry guys, where there is a match available within the province. So why are we filling it from Atlantic Canada? I'm not entirely sure.
And we do have just kind of a question. I don't know if it can be answered here, but just to put out in the world from Christine McLaughlin, saying, can Rapido be configured to always be mediated? And then Becky replied, from my perspective, you would need to set up mediation rules to cover all cases, which could be relatively easy depending on approach.
Okay. I'm going to move on to the question about what sort of workarounds you are using. I think several people have already mentioned your workarounds in discussing your challenges, but so what are you doing to overcome the shortcomings of the Ex Libris systems that you're using? And we've already talked about double checking on things to to find out whether you've actually got the right holdings or not. But and not using mediated is, patron mediated is certainly another workaround that I know several schools are using with peer-to-peer in any case. I'm not sure if you can go to unmediated with Rapido. It sounds like perhaps not. Other thoughts, comments on workarounds that you haven't mentioned before? Is anybody using the automated features in Rapido? I'm not entirely sure how what is meant by that question. It's on my questions list, but I'm not sure to what extent you have control over how much automation there is. But those of you who are using it more than I am might comment on that. Yep. Nobody else? You might as well.
Yeah, sorry, I'm being the Rapido person. It's again Shelley from Carleton. We have quite a lot, or we had quite a lot automated. The combo of border problems and the postal strike was sort of a 1-2 punch that has meant we're doing more mediation now. And there is a way that it's actually really too bad that it's easy. It seems to be easier in Rapido to interrupt the request and put in more mediation, when to me, the point of the system is that it has a lot of automation built into it. And so to pay for the subscription in order to more easily have staff spend more time on the requests seems really backward to me. But Rapido does have a lot of tools for mediation, as Becky alluded to. You could write the rules so that everything goes through mediation. But then you also lose some of the really great stuff where the request just goes off and goes through the rota and finds a partner and comes back. When that works well, it's fantastic. And so we have sort of eaten the troubleshooting on the back end to be able to take advantage of that really fast, really great, seamless stuff for our users. But we are starting to question that a little bit.
So we have CJ with his hand up online. CJ?
Yes, at the U of A, we've been using WorldShare basically separate from all my resource sharing, like completely separated, and not using any interoperability that might be there. And that's actually been working out well for us because we've been burned a couple of times with Relay, connecting the requests between the two systems, and then something breaks and suddenly you have like maybe hundreds of requests that you have to manage in both systems separately suddenly. So sometimes interoperability is not that great because when it breaks, it can cause a lot of work for staff.
So your workaround has been to go back to running them as independent systems. And we'll
correct.
Talking about the OCLC stuff in just a second here. And I can see that being a blessing and a curse.
Right.
It's obviously managing multiple systems. The more slick integrated systems you have, the more systems you have to manage independently. As you pointed out from Carlton, there's something backwards about that. But no, that's great. Thank you. Now, it's probably a good time. Any last thoughts about the Ex Libris stuff? Katie, you had your hand up before you stepped out. Did you?
I mean, sorry, Katie from NASCAD. This might relate to like things we want, but I feel like with the systems, there's generally a focus on the way requests go through the network. There's people have touched on various things about like how well Rapido works or different things like that, or the rotas. But what I want is a ticketing system for my requests that my staff can manage and do things with. And having rotas that are going places and doing things are nice, but I'm always left with a lack of information because the focus is building a rota and sending it through the network and getting vendors to get you into their network. I want to manage requests, and my users are requesting things whether they're on your network or not. And that leads to all the other things we've talked about: challenges, workarounds, difficulties. If the fundamental goal of the system is to be a request management system, and then there are useful tools for how to do those things beyond the network, but it's like there's no acknowledgement that there is beyond the network. It's like, no, I'll just recruit one more person into the network. You're never going to have everybody on your network.
Brilliant. Thank you. Any final thoughts on the Ex Libris stuff before we move on to OCLC stuff? Okay. Well, it's raised some really interesting ideas, some of which we'll come back to when we talk about what we would like to see. And of course, Katie's already given us that part of the conversation, which is actually you're pointing out some really important, important ideas there. So thank you. Yeah. So we're going to go through and ask the same questions about the OCLC products. Relay ILL, which many of us are currently using, scheduled to finish up next June, as I understand it. The World Chair, which I've already spoken about because I got confused, and TPASA, and First Research, the WorldCat catalog just on its own. And I think that's useful to point out that, and the difference between First Research and worldcat.org, those are also significant, but that's another conversation. So what's working well for you for the OCLC products that you're using? I think you talked about the WorldCat, but let's talk a little bit about, what do you like about Relay? And for those of you who are using TPASA, what do you like about TPASA so far? I've heard Katie and others talk about Relay as a management system. And I'm wondering if other people feel the same way, that it's, that its big benefit is, you're being able to manage your requests. But Cynthia, you've got folks online?
We have CJ again, if you'd like to speak.
Sure. Relay has been used at the U of A for many, many years.
You're muted, TJ.
Am I?
You're muted, CJ.
It looks like I'm on.
Still muted.
Still muted.
Not sure what's going on there.
We are hearing you. It's fine.
1 second.
Get it started again. That's my fault. I had it muted. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
There we go. Sorry.
No. Okay. Yeah, it looked like I was unmuted on my end. So.
Yes. Yeah, you were. You were muted at this end. Sorry about that.
All right. So the U of A has been using Relay for many, many years, and it's been great as a system to connect with all kinds of libraries. And so like we're talking usually about like communicating between universities here, but it's all kinds of libraries, public libraries, libraries at law firms, government departments. They all want to connect with us. We have lots of holdings and lots of material that we want to share. So Relay had been a product that really helped us do that. We serviced most of our requests through Relay. The other systems like WorldShare, DocLine were kind of smaller systems for us because we didn't use them as much. But WorldShare ILL allowed us to access a lot of international libraries. So that's been kind of our go-to for that. Now, a lot of Canadian libraries are in WorldShare, so suddenly we're using it for that as well. So yeah, so those were kind of the main benefits for us. WorldShare ILL, of course, with IFM makes it really easy for payments between libraries. Now that we've switched to Alma resource sharing peer-to-peer, we don't use borrowing for Relay any longer, and our lending is probably going to end in December.
Yep.
We have a comment in the chat from Pam Marr from University of St. Anne. WorldShare allows us to request materials quite easily from Quebec libraries in Moncton as a francophone library outside of Quebec, but not using the same systems. This is essential for us.
Yeah. And WorldShare does that better than Relay does, or? Sorry, questions back for the folks in the chat. I will give them a minute to. Other folks?
So they don't have Relay. They're very, very small university.
Okay, so they're just using WorldShare. Yeah. Joe, you had your hand up.
Yeah, the WorldShare doesn't work with like 1866 Relay. The connection that was never developed to the point where it was working with any degree of dependability, as I think CJ alluded to the fact that requests the connection would often break and you'd be stuck with, unusable requests basically. But But I'd just like to say, everybody knows my feelings about Relay, and I'll be sad to see it go. And the thing I think, in this whole, philosophical kind of thing is the fact that it was an old school kind of system, and it allowed that kind of management. I mean, your staff was managing it. It was capable of doing some automations, but it was largely a management system where staff could, you could easily receive requests from anyone. I mean, GSM, great thing. I mean, you could say, parse emails into Relay, and it would create usable requests. And then you would have you could set up a relationship, communications with the lenders of any size or shape or size. And again, with the borrowing, I mean, things weren't shooting off, and things that are, is it a benefit or not? Automation is definitely a two-edged sword, and you really get to see it when you get a thing like, a service like, especially with the borrowing of returnables, because the cataloging is so weird, and God knows what, it's going to match on. So I like Relay for that reason, or, and I think that, that philosophy needs to be built into whatever systems we're going to go to in the future. I think that that's really important, that, staff intervention, mediation is an important part of this process. And we have to keep that in mind. And yeah, so.
Just to put the question that way, because Relay is coming to, end of life in June. What do you think, looking at the systems, the other options that you have, what do you think you're going to lose when Relay goes away? Yeah, thanks. Yeah, get yourself a microphone.
Hi there, Colin McKay from Acadia. And one of the things that I do think that Relay does well from the staff side, and that's something that I haven't really seen. I haven't used too much of WorldShare ILL and haven't used too much of the other Ex Libris products other than Alma, but even like the ability to send canned messages to both suppliers and patrons, which is something that we sometimes have limited staff time, and we want to send confirmation messages to patrons saying that we received your message, that there's a Canada Post strike, there might be a delay. And with our experience with Alma, it takes a lot of staff time to kind of like manually write some of those messages. When Relay had a lot of that kind of capability that we could do that kind of relationship building with both suppliers and with patrons, without having to kind of start from scratch every single time or send manual emails to different institutions or manual emails to different patrons. It is something that was really handy, at least in my position. That is a way that we could just communicate with our patrons, which maybe goes into that kind of idea of patron management system, where you have the ability to kind of quickly and easily communicate between suppliers, between patrons, which there are some like statuses in Alma that you can use to kind of communicate in like a notes field, but there isn't necessarily the same. I haven't found the same ease in terms of communicating specifically with borrowers within Alma. That is going to be something that we will probably lose, and we'll kind of add a little bit more staff time as we try and figure that out in our other systems.
So we have some online comments. So just one from CJ is that overall Relay support staff are always very helpful and interested in developing features for us. And then Joanne mentioned that one great thing about Relay is that you could see what records it was actually matching on, which you don't get with Alma. You just see which libraries. And Alex responded to that saying, I wish Alma could do that. That would make troubleshooting a lot simpler. And we also have a question, or somebody added a challenge, billing with off-system requests with Tapasa is time consuming. That's kind of the second part of that question.
Yeah, Marlon from Dalhousie, go ahead.
Marlon from Dalhousie. I think one of the things we're going to lose with Relay is we had a great institutional form, and once we lose that, for other libraries to request from us, and once that goes away, if someone wants to send us a request, I know in Alma you can set up so that you have an email partner, but then either we have to manually put that request into Alma and all the correspondence afterwards, it's not automated. And we get an awful lot of lending requests from a lot of different libraries. So we're gonna lose a lot of functionality that way when we don't have a form that everyone can access, if I understand it correctly.
Thanks. Oh, go ahead.
Andy from King's. In a similar vein to what we've been talking about, I know different people have different opinions on this, but one of the things I think we're losing, because we are a library that our only other system outside of Alma peer-to-peer is Relay. So without Relay, I think, and with the introduction of peer-to-peer in the first place, I think there has been a lot of confusion for patrons as to what is coming locally and what is an ILL, which is not the hardest thing to explain in the moment, but it does lead to tough conversations when, you know, faculty in particular realize that they don't get to just keep this forever. We do have to send it back within a few weeks. And so it does make it harder to explain almost after the fact that we are requesting this from outside of our typical consortia, when it is not a separate system, and that they're not requesting from an outside system. And that is my other point too, almost in a reversal of St. Anne's issue. We do only have Relay. So without a separate request management system, there is going to be a little bit of training opportunity, certainly, but difference between that kind of separate system when we are requesting. You know, we do still use Iliad forms when requesting from the US. We do still have to email people, and if we're not able to keep that contained in a separate system, there is confusion upon arrival of these items, where this came from and how we're supposed to, and how much information we're supposed to put into the new temporary record, and et cetera, et cetera.
All right, thanks.
So we have, it's kind of slid into the challenges.
We have
section.
split into the challenges, and I will be.
A few comments here, one of which is Philippe mentioned, I would like to have the possibility of communication between Tapasa and Alma. And then we also had quite a long comment here from Sarah, so I might paraphrase a little bit. She mentioned the challenge with WorldShare Tapasa is issues with bib matching between English and French records for the same title. Another challenge is requests coming from libraries that don't use the system must be treated as off-system requests, which are more time-consuming and manual. The address book for off-system libraries must be entirely managed manually, and the billing for all off-system transactions is also entirely manual. And the reporting module lacks key fields that would allow us to create a second automated workflow outside the system. The Tapasa reporting module does not link to the address book data, which limits our ability to streamline these processes. Unable to query the catalogs of libraries that do not use WorldShare, but they're currently working with OCLC to try to minimize the issues related to bib matching between English and French records for the same title. Some challenges.
We've definitely moved into the challenges area. So what are your challenges with Relay? You can't be silent. The standalone, the desktop software is a nightmare, and we hate it. And they never finished the cloud version. So what else have you got?
This is Katie from NASCAD, because apparently I've become the public speaker for people populating things in my phone. And they said reports. There are no good statistics or reports with Relay.
we've summed up the challenges with Relay and
We have another,
Yep.
some comments in here. So some, Amanda, the possibility of communication further than an NSIP. And then Alex mentioned talking about full interaction, like the Trove stuff we heard about earlier. What other comments do we have? I think that. Oh, and then earlier on, Alex did mention that OCL is working on, or has a request form that they're hoping to share out the code for more publicly at some point. Thank you. And Becky has her hand.
Thanks. And I think I've been forgetting to mention that I'm with Memorial University of Newfoundland. Amanda brought up NSIP, and NSIP is also something that I'd kind of like to highlight because we were a relatively early adopter of ALMA, and when we did that back in 2015, we had an NSIP integration with our relay that allowed us to track the movement of items in ALMA in addition to relay. Yes, it wasn't perfect. Yes, it was pretty basic, but it was something that it covered the movement of the item so that you could actually know what was going on. I don't know how many others in Canada had that NSIP relationship going on with relay at the time. I think we actually got it from Australia at some point. But we've now, we're done with relay, but we're still using WorldShare as a second system. And there is an NSIP for it, but it only covers transferring requests out to WorldShare. It doesn't cover the whole life cycle. And that is something where it seems as though, this is a challenge for us to try and track the items and try and make sure we know what's going on. And, yes, it would be great if either NSIP could be further developed or that we've got, as Amanda's indicating, and I see she has her hand up, of, something further than NSIP as well.
And as Becky mentioned, yes, Amanda has her hand up.
Yeah, so we've connected our ALMA with NSIP to WorldShare. Same thing, the challenges are it sends like a username.
yeah, your mic is.
Oh, sorry,
your
Amanda.
mic- if you
don't
put
mind
your mic
putting
down, we'll be able to.
We can't hear you very well.
There you go.
Now.
Yeah, you should be good now, I think.
Okay. So
That's
we've
better.
connected ALMA with WorldShare with the NSIP. And so the challenges are that it sends very limited information. But we are working, I guess this goes into accounts, but we are working with trying to set up the automations then within WorldShare to go further. If there, it still requires putting staff time into looking at the request, adding in additional pieces. But at least the automations on the WorldShare side can push it further. But setting it up is a challenge. Wow, so.
We are starting to move into the workarounds area at that point, which is perfect. We've talked about OCL potentially creating a uniform request form. I think there are others of us who will build a request form with or without relay. But other workarounds that and it sounds like the work to integrate English and French records is it. You can call it a workaround as you want. A future development. I don't know whether the OCLC guys have anything to say about what's on the roadmap for workarounds for filling in gaps in the systems that we know are there, but we just haven't rolled them out yet. So yeah, Peter, you want?
I was just going to mention on the bib match, because that isn't in our presentation, but yeah, we have some libraries piloting that right now, and we're in the process of scheduling when that'll roll out. It'll be before the end of the year to everybody, but the just real high level, what that will do is, as you all know, there's often an English record, and then a library has created a let's say, French language record that is for the same item, but the bibliographic record is in French. And so often libraries in Quebec especially will attach their holding to the French language record. And in the past, our automation was selecting just the most popular record, or popular meaning with the most holdings. And now the system will be able to cluster those records if it's for the same item, whether the record's in French or English. And then when it gets, and then be able to order the ROTA based on all the suppliers between the two or more records. And when the request drops into your system, it will be showing you the record for which you have your holdings. So yeah, we've done a complete update of that bib match process, bibliographic matching process, and just having it thoroughly tested. The Paybook libraries, I think a few others are running it already, and we've gotten a lot of great feedback, and that'll be rolling out soon.
I'm going to jump in here because we have some
Yep.
comments
Go
in
ahead.
the chat. So Sabina mentioned that they worked with Australian institutions in the early VDX days, and it sounds like Relay users did too. And today is convincing her that we need to go back to those collaborations and strengthen them. I just wanted to highlight that because yes. And then Alex mentioned the OCL form is for ALMA, so for the libraries and places that don't have ILL systems or don't talk to ours. So a little bit more background on that form.
Okay. Yeah, well, this whole communications question, how are people, are people using the, the OCLC user group features that are out there, and how are you finding them for answering your questions? And, what sort of coordination are you doing with other OCLC product users, setting best practices and what have you? I mean, a lot of us have been using Relay for a number of years. That might have been more a thing when you were setting up, but how do you find that the group communication process, the community process? Because we've been told that that's a really critical part of, I don't know, I suspect that it may be more critical at the end of the day than exactly which software you're using. Anybody prepared to comment on your use of the OCLC listservs and groups?
We have CJ online with his hand up.
All right, I hope everybody can hear me.
Yep.
All right, good. So we don't use their communication groups very often. And I think it's because within COPL, we have many libraries that use different systems, and we really communicate among each other. We use our own group as the way to communicate. So perhaps that's limiting in some way, but if you have to be part of all these different groups for different systems, it becomes challenging. So our focus is more our COPL resource sharing community, and that's where we discuss our issues.
Okay. Great, thank you. Just on the subject of challenges, I have spoken to a couple people about this, about the June deadline for the demise of Relay. What do people think? Are there people who are raring to go? And I've heard from some libraries that are planning to finish up their Relay work as of this December, but are there others of you who an extension of 6 months would be beneficial, or the short June deadline is a challenge for you? Anybody want to comment on that? Yeah.
So Jean Blackburn, Executive Director of COPL. We just recently had a meeting of our resource sharing community, and we talked about this. This came up, and I can just share that there were many concerns from particularly smaller libraries within COPL, libraries that are not on ALMA, that have been using Relay and are now facing a choice of what system to go to. And and yeah, are nervous, are worried about being left behind, are worried about being left out of networks, and are kind of feel like they're having to scramble to figure things out on a quicker timeline than they would choose. And so there was some talk too about the June deadline coming kind of at an awkward place in budget cycles as well. So yeah, so I'll just share that from several libraries in COPL.
Yeah, Katie.
Hi, it's Katie from NASCAD again. So I'm going to say this on behalf of a number of people that I've had communication with, and we haven't really touched on this at all because I don't think a lot of the decision makers are in the room, but cost is a real issue. And for the smaller libraries, there is a number of us discussing moving to nothing. We aren't adopting a new system. It's so far the offers that we have been given are not within our budgets, and we have to figure out how to do that. And I think the point about the end of the June not being a useful time financially, but also not being a useful time during the school year to come right off a school year, try and prep all your final stuff and then into what your next steps are. It's lovely to think that we can transition off by December. And I think that's what a lot of people I've talked to are. They're going to spend their school year trying to wean themselves off Relay more than give it up cold turkey. But that transition for smaller libraries with small staff, they don't have the time in a school year to research other systems to figure that out. And they certainly in a time of budget cuts in Nova Scotia, it's coming hard and fast. And I'm sure that is not an unusual thing across the country. We just don't have the budget to move to a larger scale system.
Yeah. Go to you next, Katie. Push the button.
Simon Lloyd, UPEI. Thanks very much to everybody who put this together and for everyone who's spoken so far. As one of the smaller libraries, University of Prince Edward Island, plus 100 on the comments that have just been shared. We're looking ahead with great apprehension to the demise of Relay in June. We're certainly interested in hearing further discussion about possible extension. We are not in a place yet where we are able to make final decisions one way or another. But I would say that we are also possibly facing the prospect of nothing. We just don't know if the new reality is viable for us financially or operationally. And that's obviously a very, very concerning prospect. So for the folks who have spoken from the smaller libraries, we'd definitely be interested in connecting with you and talking further and seeing how we figure out where we go from here. So thanks very much for the opportunity.
Jump in and just say that CJ has his hand up as well.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that we've chosen December to end lending in our Relay system because it takes time to, those last requests we get in December, we still have to fill those. So we're still into January, February with getting requests completed. We have to get our books back within the system. So there's possibility of renewal requests. So we basically want to make sure that we get all of our stuff back within the system, and it takes time. So we are concerned because it's going to leave people behind. Institutions are going to be left behind in terms of not being able to request from us.
That'll be we'll move on to the last question.
Jean Blackburn again from COPL. I guess, want to highlight the cost piece a little bit more because we saw that graph and it was a very familiar looking graph to me and I probably to most people in the room during that first presentation of the requests going down, right? So it typically, now this is still a very, very important piece. Interlibrary loan will still always be needed, but I think for most places, the number of requests has been declining. So to face costs in systems that are going up really is a nonsensical proposition for libraries. And libraries that are having budget cuts. It just doesn't make sense to pay more for systems and possibly multiple systems now to manage a declining number of requests. So that's another real fundamental challenge that we're seeing, particularly in the smaller places.
Thanks, Jean. Yeah, okay, so on to our final question, which is, what would you like to see? What suggestions do you have for enhancing resource sharing, interoperability, or for resource sharing in general? And, you've already mentioned a number of them. An option for small libraries that may have been running on only one of these systems and are not going to be able to afford a suite of interlocking products. English improvements to the relationship between English and French records, particularly where there are duplicates in both languages for the same item. I'm interested in the people mentioned a need for better communication between TUPASA and ALMA. We don't know enough about my institution. We don't know enough about how that works to know where we are with that. But so you've already mentioned a bunch of changes and enhancements. But what else have you got? What do you want to see? How can this national network be made better, more effective, regardless of it? And I think taking into account that it is very unlikely that we're going to, have a single system, or in the foreseeable system, future systems that are fully interoperable. But Joe?
Yeah, I think you said it. We're not, there are two options here. We all use the same system, or we find a way to make the systems that we use work together. Yeah. And we can't, and no, we're not going to be all using the same system. That's not going to happen. But I think that the first presentation, the kind of thing that they're doing is what, in Australia, is what we should be doing here. Devising a way that we can have our systems, whatever they may be, work together, or devise some sort of brokering system like we used to have with Amicus. I mean, in the good old days of Amicus, it didn't matter. You needed a computer terminal and internet, and you could be in ILL business. And we could have something like that. And you do need something at that level because, the resources that something like that requires and the leadership that something like that requires is substantial, and it's not something that we could do individually. Especially in Canada, we don't have the kind of huge institutions that the United States has. So the kind of technical know-how that would be required for it, and the leadership is, I think that's what we should be doing. We're concentrating on systems and vendors and things like that, but I think we should be thinking more broadly and trying to find a way to create an umbrella organization or something that can find out what the needs are and how to reach them, how to fill them.
Jean Blackburn Copel. I would just like to, I totally agree. I'm really, that was a very exciting presentation, and I do think we need to find user-friendly, affordable ways, sustainable ways to knit various systems together. I agree, we're not going to see a world where we're all going to be on the same thing. But I would like to just introduce, just as an example of other consortial or collective initiatives that are happening, of which resource sharing is a foundational component. Shared print in particular, shared print archiving projects, which are happening in our regions and across and at a national scale. We need to have resource sharing systems among the libraries and within the consortial groups and within these connections that that are participating in these systems, so that we can make sure that access is a thriving part of shared print archiving projects. So my concern a little bit these days is that we're seeing systems shaping interlibrary loan networks rather than geography or consortial relationships as we used to. I think we need to watch that. We need to keep those consortial and those geographical relationships strong so that they can continue to underpin these other projects that we are doing now and that we'll want to do in the future.
So a few things happening online. I'll just bring a few of them forward. Sarah Sampson was saying, provider in general, they need to stop developing systems that are enclosed on themselves, regardless of the provider. That's not the philosophy behind PEB/ILL, especially not when it's within the same provider. Why can't public libraries using resource sharing ILL communicate with libraries using TAPASA? This puts us at a disadvantage, even though we're paying for the most expensive system. It goes against the spirit of mutual support that we've always upheld. So I think that's supporting that same thing. The systems are choosing who we can do resource sharing with, not us choosing it. There was actually an interesting comment a little further back from Sabina Pagato at OCL. Their requests have gone way up in OCL. And I guess probably at many schools that have implemented Rapido, since making it easier to find and request the items really increases the number of requests. So they've gone way up because they've made it easier for their users to do that. And in particularly, they were saying that undergrad requests have gone significantly up.
Okay, more thoughts, comments, Katie?
So I did want to just echo Katie from NASCAD again. Just wanted to echo that part about we also have seen explosion of our stats. We've been doing some really good library outreach, so some of it is being a victim of our own success. But more than that, I really resonated with the comment earlier about the CDI and what's in the CDI. And there's a lot of half records. We've found people requesting records that turn out to be the publisher's flyer for a book. We're not even getting a book review. Yeah. So the person follows the link to the publisher's flyer, know that they don't want that, but they do want the book, but they don't know what they're going from there. So they request the CDI link. And so we end up chronically turning off pieces of the CDI, which if anybody didn't know you could do that, you can. So there are a number of databases we just had to shut off. The other thing that came across my phone, and I won't take credit for this one, was the just the absolute need to build these national networks that are falling apart. We all remember the moves, or those of us that were old enough, to Canadian servers post 9/11. In these moments, the vendors are filling a void because we are asking them to. We ask for features, we ask for those things, but we need to be clear about the big picture that we need, which is that national network. And I know Joe at DAL loves Relay because it was so compatible. He could go into Medline, he could go into the other places, it could talk to Rapido, it could do those things. And so there were some comments earlier about like, all the different pieces that are missing. That's the ticketing system what I was calling a ticketing system, but that was the management side of Relay that was so good, was that interoperability.
Now, for the schools that are seeing an increase in your interlibrary loan, do you think that's largely because of self-mediated? So you guys are running, or, patron mediated, so that the patrons see that they can make a request for something that may not be in your library, and someone else has commented that sometimes they don't even know that it's not in your library. They just found it in the catalog and were
We
able to
had
click.
we had to shut down. We now have a button in ours because we're in Novanet that says beyond Novanet. So we've had to limit it so that the CDI is optional. And I generally talk with my grad students about that and my faculty. And we've been making much more use of the citation search, where you can do an individual search and then put in a request for that, bypassing Relay. And that's one of the ways we've been able to cut out Relay faster, is by doing those citation searches, because it will generate a request for anything. But the CDI is a mixed bag, and it's a great tool for my graduate students, because working at a small art college, everybody is working multidisciplinary. We need accesses to those other things, but for my undergraduate students, it muddies the waters.
Yeah, some of the specifics of what do we do about the central discovery index in Alma, probably a little outside our scope for today, but it is the general question of patron self-mediated and how do you do it and what are the barriers to it. I think that's a really useful one to flag. And we've been struggling with what to do with the CDI in Alma for, but that's part of that larger question. And there will be members of the interlibrary lending, the document sharing community in Canada who aren't using Alma. So that becomes, as I say, part of the question. Just seeing what do we want to do to follow up on this question about the suggestions. Certainly this one has come up a lot.
Online,
Yeah.
Peter.
You've got folks online. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's some things flowing by quickly here. CDI, in case anybody else was wondering in the room, Central Discovery Index in Alma. And then PEB is ILL in French. So there was one that came in from Sarah Sampson from Paybook. On our end, it may look like our requests have decreased, but that's not the case. We now have a consortial loan system integrated directly into our circulation module, which is fantastic. It reduces the number of ILL requests for monographs, and we've seen a surge in statistics for that. As for article requests, since the ILL buttons and forms were embedded directly in our catalog, thanks to WMS, the numbers are increasing because it's easier for users to fill out, and most importantly, more visible. This is a major win for Paybook, and big thanks to OCLC system for that part.
Yeah, one of the major questions that's come out of this conversation is how can the Canadian Consortium help members so that all members, potential members of a library interoperability community in Canada can participate. And it's been quite clear from this conversation that there are many smaller academic libraries, but also a host of other borrowers who are either being left out of the equation now or will be increasingly left out as we move to new systems. So we've talked some about the approaches to that. Certainly OCL's talked about, providing a form set that can be used by anybody, whether they are members of a particular group or using particular software or not. Yeah.
Hi, this is Abhijit from OCLC. I'm interested to hear if you guys are using Voila at all, and if that helps in finding, records and placing requests. This is the Libraries and Archives Canada's holding.
Yeah, that's a question that I had as well, is that we haven't heard much about Library and Archives Canada's potential role in resource sharing in Canada. And I'm wondering if people have thoughts on why that is and what their role ought to be in what we would like to see. Oh, is that this afternoon? Okay. I should have, yeah, all right, that's what that'll be part of the panel discussion, but that was something, you know, marked from this conversation that, that LACBAC did not come up. Yeah.
Dean Seaman from University of Victoria. Yeah, I've kind of been thinking about this, especially as it like the role that consortium might play. And the thing that I keep on coming back to is the national infrastructure that we developed recently, where we do kind of build a centralized system, something like Scalaris, that actually allows many institutions that might not be able to afford it themselves to actually participate. I know in BC we have a few systems in BC ELN that kind of operate similarly for institutional repositories or digital libraries, but I think just that kind of shared infrastructure, it seems like similar problems, and it would also avoid every institution from having to subscribe to something themselves, pay quite a bit of money for that, for something that, you know, maybe requests for smaller institutions might be going down. I don't really know. So yeah, I don't know. Just want to throw that idea out there.
Yeah, certainly reporting and statistics is one of those things that's come up that people have mentioned as a, you know, as a workaround. In a more perfect system, you know, a more automated approach to, you know, getting the good data. And as you say, as we move to multiple systems, changes in one system's usage may simply be a matter of that traffic has moved to a different system. So the usage is certainly one of the things that I noted we're raising as, you know, what we would like to see better in the future. And that gets us to the question of vendor support and documentation. What would you like to see in terms of improvements to, you know, how the vendors and the companies offering these different softwares, you know, how they support you, how they provide training and information? Do you feel they're doing a good job now? You've got the information you need. There's been a lot of talk about we're doing it ourselves and not particularly relying on the application providers. Thoughts on training support, technical support? You mentioned that it was slow. I have to say that the technical support has definitely been lacking for Relay, but I don't think that's anything that Relay users don't know. But yep.
Hi, Shelley from Carleton again. So we have Rapido. We use the peer-to-peer resource sharing in Alma. We're part of the AFN with our local schools. And then we also have OCLC on the side. But putting OCLC aside, that's sort of 3 different systems and just with the same vendor. And parsing the documentation can often be difficult. Support can be difficult. Like, is this sometimes when I go in to put a case, like, is this a Rapido problem? I don't know. Maybe it's a resource sharing problem. Maybe it's an AFN problem. I don't know where the problem is starting, and support sometimes also doesn't know. So even the interoperability within a single system can be difficult, and I do find the documentation doesn't always help me figure out where my problem originates.
There was a note way back about wanting more access to electronic holdings, open access journals. Books are becoming less requestable due to ebooks. So the idea that being able to lend your electronic and open access stuff through the systems is a big one. And I think that's a topic that will be coming up in the future in the webinars and things like that around whole ebook lending and those types of things.
Particularly open access resources. So that lends one to think that there are open access resources that should be in the CDI, and for those of us who are using Alma and are not, that's an interesting question in its own right. Now, we've got just a couple minutes before we finish up. Anybody want a last word? Anything we haven't covered today that you think is an important topic that we should be thinking about for national document delivery or resource sharing? Well, thank you, everybody. This has been really instructive. I mean, I've got a page of notes of things to think about. Of course, you guys have got a transcript of all of this. We've raised a bunch of useful, useful ideas and maybe a framework for figuring out what the priority items are for national interlibrary loan or national document delivery. It goes well beyond interlibrary loan these days. Yeah, anybody online who wants a last word?
There was just a comment in here that I'll say that was just about, it'd be great if WLA or the Canadian Library Directory had a specific field so libraries could list what they use for ILL. But otherwise, I think, and just some comments about training for TAPASA was fine and good. So those were kind of the last words in the chat there. Thank you so much, Peter, for moderating the conversation.
Thank you, everybody, for all of your comments, both in person and online. As I say, I think this has been really, really useful and generated a huge number of ideas, things to follow up on. So thank you.
All right. Yes. So thank you, Peter. I'm going to give you a round of applause.